Okay, the next topic is really, really funny, so brace yourselves for this. You know how Poland was ruled by a party called Law and Justice before the new coalition won um, the parliamentary election, right? Well, so the Law and Justice Party, when it was in charge, Morawiecki was the prime minister then, actually did some very bad things with funding. It did very bad things with funding. It misused funds during the campaign. Let me see what this says here. Lawmakers from Poland opposition party. Okay, I'm gonna get to that. But there's an electoral commission in Poland that sort of looks over stuff, that sort of makes sure everything's kosher, that makes sure that everything's okay. And when Law and Justice was in power, it could get away with a lot because it was the government. Law and Justice was, well, it was Law and Justice. It worked day and night to erode democracy. It misused funds in its own favor during elections. It did. It took steps to basically do away with democracy. There was a huge fear during the latest electoral cycle, during the elections for the parliament, that if Law and Justice would win, then we would be witnessing the last free elections to the parliament. That was a big consensus among many, many people, which drove many people to the polls to oust Law and Justice. And now, the Electoral Commission actually could look into the misappropriation of funds by Law and Justice, because Law and Justice is no longer in charge and it cannot just cover its own ass like it did before. As a result, I have exact figures here. As a result, so according to the Electoral Commission, the Law and Justice Party illegally spent 3.6 million zlotys, which would be 840,000 euro, more or less, for all of you that don't understand how Polish currency works. It was illegally spent on the 2023 electoral campaign. Okay. It listed electioneering at events designed to encourage military recruitment and an advertisement from the Justice Ministry as examples of misuse of funds. Now, let's get to the punishment. The punishment for the Law and Justice Party is Law and Justice will lose around 10 million zlotys, 2.3 million euro, from the funding related to its 2023 election performance, and will also lose about 10 million zloty per year in annual funding until the end of the current parliamentary term in 2027. It will also have to repay the money it spent illegally. All of this is very, very funny for a couple of reasons. First, it is very funny and nice that the Law and Justice Party actually has to pay. It actually is being held accountable for the bad things that it did, and it cannot just go scot-free for all the misuse of funds that it did while it was in charge. That is very good and quite funny. But the actually funny thing about it is that now the Polish right-wing party is low on funds. The Law and Justice Party is now quite low on funds, which means, and that is the kicker of this whole story, the lawmakers from Poland's opposition party, because let us remind you, the Law and Justice Party, since it's not in charge anymore, is now the opposition party. Lawmakers from Poland's opposition party, Law and Justice, will donate part of their own salaries to the party, its deputy head said on Friday, after penalties for misuse of state funds has left Law and Justice in dire financial straits. And they are also, they basically are like me, okay? The Law and Justice Party essentially became like me, depending on donations. And they're really asking for donations. Let me see here. Law and Justice lawmakers will be supporting our party financially through donations starting in September, Błaszczak told a press conference. MPs and senators will pay a minimum of 1,000 zlotys, 233 euro per month, and MEPs a minimum of 5,000 zlotys, 1,168 euro. So elected Law and Justice politicians, the elected Law and Justice politicians will fund their own party from their own salaries. That is so funny. That is such perfect karma that I simply could not talk about it on stream. This is perfect. And of course, there was the more serious note to this. I believe Donald Tusk said it, that if a government could do such a thing, just misuse funds for its own electoral purposes, and then sort of not be in charge and get away with it, then that would set a very bad precedent for democracy. If they could just get away with it, right? That would be basically a pretty big blow to democracy. If parties that were in charge could just misuse funds, then be voted out of power and still face no consequence whatsoever. So the fact that they are facing consequences for what they've done is actually really, really good. Aside from being very, very funny. So I believe I've delivered some positivity to this stream. I believe imagine that happened to the Republican Party in some capacity, that they would be like, oh, wait, you've done this weird thing. Well, I guess we'll have to give you a huge fat penalty for that. That would be very, very funny. I just like it when political parties are not allowed to do whatever they want without consequence. That is what I like. I like to see any sort of accountability in politics. And that is what we're seeing in this case. Accountability. Right? Isn't that right? Isn't that good? Is accountability not good? Raise your hands in the chat if you think accountability is good. Raise your hands if you think accountability is bad. Oh wow, people actually raised their hands. Oh, yes, okay, I will add this. I will add this because I have a quote from Donald Tusk that I've just mentioned. Speaking during a press conference on Friday, Prime Minister Tusk said that the former ruling party used public funds and opportunities stemming from being in power directly for the benefit of the election campaign and praised the National Electoral Commission for its decision. He also added that if a government which was widely known to have been doing bad things is not held responsible after the transition of power, then that is devastating to democracy as a whole. And I couldn't agree more.